Let's get into things. We see your hat. We want to start with the World Junior. What was your overall take from that tournament from the Canadian perspective?
I think from the outset, uh, I think expectations are always very, very high. I think when you look at the cream of the crop as it relates to that age group, they're in the NHL. The players that are there, are they being asked to do something that maybe they're not capable of? Are they trying to play a system that maybe they're not capable of? Are they trying to be too cute? Are they not playing? Are they trying to play too much of a skill game versus a heart and soul, blood and guts? We're gonna have an energy line. We're gonna be physical and aggressive. We're gonna come at you. I think we've seen in years past a lot of complaints that Canada's not skilled enough, and now we're hearing that they don't have enough heart. And I think it's probably a little bit of both. Their top end players are in the national. What does that team look like with Macklin Celebrini? What does that team look like with Matthew Schaefer? What does that team look like with Bennett Seneke? Like you go down that list, what does it look like when those players are there? And if we go back, 5, 10 years, those top end players, a lot of them were playing on that team. And so, you look at these other countries, they've got their top end players. They've got top end 19-year-olds. That tournament is a 19-year-old tournament, realistically, with a handful of 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds, etc. But you look at a Gavin McKenna who, by all accounts, has probably struggled more than many expected in college. That's a 22 to 24-year-old league. So you look at a 17, 18-year-old and you look at a 22 to 24-year-old with respect to how strong they are, how mature they are, all of the things as it relates to the game of hockey from a physical standpoint, and then a maturity standpoint, a mental aspect of the game, you would expect that they would struggle a little bit. Having said that, to lose in the manner that they did to Czechia, I think rubs people the wrong way. It's not a prototypical Dale Hunter exit. For those that have watched the London Knights play in since they've owned the team. So I think in that regard, whether it's they got full buy-in, whether they found the chemistry that they thought they were going to get, I've heard also people talk about, the number of players that either weren't there or could have been there. And that's a coulda, shoulda, woulda. Let's stop making excuses and just we didn't get it done. It
Mhm.
happens. All these other countries are getting better too. Czechia for a number of years was down in the dumps, in the doldrums. They couldn't win a hockey game in the World Junior, and now they're back on top and beat Canada. They get a silver medal, and it's we have to realize that other countries have good players too.
Yeah, and they seem to be getting better all the time, no question. You talked about Gavin McKenna taking some heat, I would say right now. He looked fine in the tournament, had some numbers, but I mean, for a first overall generational talent is what he's touted as. I mean, you mentioned this is a 19-year-old tournament where he's playing in a league that's a 22-year-old league in the NCAA. But what is the NHL? Like a 27, 28, 29-year-old guys in their prime best in the world league. You look at Macklin Celebrini, doesn't seem to be having any trouble with it. I think if you're trying to compare the two, you would think McKenna would be able to light this tournament up a little bit, and it just didn't go that way. Do you think there's some hesitation from teams who are thinking they might have the first overall pick with him?
Well, I think you go back to his year last year and the points he was putting up in the dub, and then to kind of see where he's at in the NCAA and now in this tournament. I'm sure there are teams that have a little pause for concern. And each year, each so called generational talent is going to be different. You've got Matthews, McDavid, you've got all these iterations, Lafreniere. You go through all these years where you got the number one pick, and look at last year. The Islanders luck out, they get the first pick. You got Matthew Schaefer there. There was talk that maybe Misa could go. Maybe there's a number of guys that could have went. They knew who they were going to take. I think the injury that he had last year probably affected that, so-called I'm going to be the number one status player. But drafting is not easy. Sometimes there's a head and shoulders guy that is the guy, and everybody knows it. And if you don't take that guy, you're crazy. Or if you think about trading that pick, you're crazy. This is the player you're going to build around. A Connor McDavid, 10 or 15-year player for your franchise. Sometimes they don't have that player. It's there's 3 or 4 guys that are kind of mulling around in that 1, 2, 3, 4 slot. And so that can be challenging, I think, for teams to figure out how do you find separation in the talent of those players, and does it boil down to character and the intangibles that sometimes present themselves?
And nobody ever remembers who goes number 2, right?
Correct.
Funny how we don't have Dag on here today, but interesting. You, Nick.
It's always
Prongs,
nice. I always love hearing that quote.
I bet.
Oh, it's awesome. So obviously in Leafs Nation, we know a thing or two about battling adversity. So just another day at the office watching the Canadian team, but 41 games through 82 for this Maple Leafs team. What's been your take for this first half for Craig Berube and company?
Very inconsistent. I think finding identity post Mitch Marner, your buddy Nick.
Yeah.
And I think trying to map out what that looks like. I think a lot of times you defer to players that are facilitators like he is, and I think they're trying to find who that person can be on their current roster. Do they need to find somebody else? Do they need to bring in somebody? What does that look like? I heard you talking while I was having audio troubles about Auston Matthews the last couple of weeks. He does look like a different player. I think for me, the biggest issue I have with him is when Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon or players of that caliber want to get the puck, they go get it. They go as deep as they have to go in the defensive zone to pick it up, and they want the puck on their stick. He wants, in my opinion, watching him, he wants somebody else to do a lot of the work, which in this case used to be Mitch Marner, facilitating, and he would find the open seams. He would then take it from the blue line in and figure out what to do from there. Those other guys take it end to end. Those other guys create space with their pace, their speed, their separation, and their ability to back off the defense of the other team to create space for their teammates. And I think that's been something that I think has looks like it has bothered him. Early in the year, last year, he didn't quite have that separator, that breakaway speed, that ability to create separation that maybe he has in years past. And maybe he's finding it again. And what that is, I don't know. There was talk he had a bad back last year. He's had a bad wrist. He's had, a lot of different injuries. As somebody who was a Band-Aid himself, sometimes those things can hamper how you play, or you're trying to just get through a season in hopes that you can find something close to 100%. And, that can be a challenge.
And they seem to be playing better hockey here recently since Christmas. That's much on the shoulders of Auston Matthews looking like a different person. Sometimes they look like a different team entirely. And the pinpoint on the timeline was firing Mark Savard, which he's an assistant coach. I mean, let's be honest, how much impact can you really have on a team? But the power plays completely flipped it since then as well. What's your thoughts on the timeline of them kind of looking like they've turned a corner a little bit?
Yeah, it's hard to really make a full analysis unless I was there around the locker room, understanding the dynamic of Mark Savard with power play with the players. Sometimes a new voice can help, especially a power play like that had struggled as much as it had. Entries, when you're able to enter the zone, the offensive zone, in an easier manner on a power play, it takes a lot of pressure off you to get set up, to get full control. I think a lot of times when you watch them in the past, they enter the zone, they get kind of set, and then they rim the puck around the boards and they restart the pressure of the defense. And so that you're constantly trying to navigate around the pressure of the penalty killers. And when you don't have, as we talked about earlier, a facilitator like Marner who you relied on a lot in the past, you really don't get into a rhythm or a structure that sets everybody up in the right spots. And I think when you look, I saw Frankie Corrado breaking this down the other day. You look at their entries, you look at how they change sides, you look at some of these things, how quickly they're able to get set up and then get to the middle of the ice. I am a huge proponent of getting the middle of the ice early, establishing a point shot or some type of shot that is going to put the penalty killers on alert and create chaos and indecision and indecisiveness and how or where they go in the defensive zone, which then can open up seams and lanes for those cross ice passes where they are elite and dangerous.
Prongs, I feel like I'm losing my mind because it's January 6th and on a daily basis I'm looking at the standings. So I ask you just an honest question. Do you think this team, is there enough runway to make the playoffs? Do you think they make the playoffs?
There's enough runway. You know, it's can they find the consistency necessary to do so? You know, you look at a team like Buffalo goes on a 10 game winning streak and look at what that did for them. They're just now kind of hovering. They were so they're going to have to go on a bit of a run. You know, St. Louis is in a similar boat here. They've got to start putting together 4 and 5 game winning streaks, lose one, 4 and 5 game winning streaks to then create that separation that's needed. Are they able to do that though? That's the trick in this condensed schedule. Are they able to find ways to win the games where they don't necessarily have their best? And that's the hallmark of a really good team is figuring out ways to win, whether it's locking it down and winning a 2-1 game, whether it's, you know, it happens to be a high scoring game, finding ways to score goals, you know, relying on your goaltender to steal a game now and then. All the different ways that we see teams win hockey games, they have to then utilize those in those moments when, in those games when they don't feel 100% or they don't feel like they have it and they're not able to give 100% of what people think they have to give 100% of what they have. And so that'll be the interesting thing in this stretch run on before the Olympics and then certainly post Olympics when it's just going to be a mad dash to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And at this point in time, a lot of people talking about a certain player, Morgan Rielly, defenseman who's been here a long time. He's certainly not playing his best hockey right now, highlighted by last game against the Islanders going -4 and just making some peewee level mistakes out there defensively. You know, I know plus minus isn't everything. He's -15 compared to Jake McCabe's plus 26. I think that is fairly telling. What are you seeing out of Morgan Rielly and his game right now?
Yeah, I think because they're missing offense up front. So you need to get it on the back end. You need the back end to provide some offense. He looks to me like he's cheating a little bit defensively in order to provide that offense. He's looking for, you know, poke checks and things where maybe he should be playing the body and lining up differently. And his angles are off a little bit. He's taking shortcuts where he needs to really be more focused in the defensive side of it, getting on the right side of, you know, piles and things of that nature. And just if they all focused on the defensive side, I personally believe that then is going to translate to better transition game and they're going to be able to go north-south quicker. They're going to play a faster game and they're going to be able to utilize the skill set that they currently have.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.